I know
The
this is
cafe
difficult to hear,
windows
but
were
you have to
subjected to a
trust me.
shivering
How can I
wind
trust you
that
after
seemed to be
everything that's
urging
happened?
people
This
to
doesn't
come
make any
in,
sense.
causing the glass to
Just let me
shake
explain,
and the
please.
streets to crumble with forgotten echoes of snow to fill the air. Kalen Ward, who was single and had no intention of seeking love, was unsure of how to express his desire for it. His sole desire was for a warm cup of coffee to alleviate his loneliness that had been haunting him since losing the person he considered to be the love of his life. For Kalen, it was the sound of metal tapping on wood and crutches that signaled the arrival of her. If you believe in the power of kindness, hope, and second chances, please feel free to like, comment, share, or subscribe to Bright Hearts. This entry was posted on March 23, 2009 by an anonymous commenter. Your assistance is truly the reason why stories like this are kept alive. Kane had accepted a blind date with Mira, his 8-year-old daughter. However, he wasn't entirely sure about his place in the dating world, having lost his wife Lena 3 years ago. He had created sanity around himself. The school drop-offs, packed lunches in little pink containers, bedtime stories with a mirror on his shoulder, and work that filled hours but not the emptiness, all contributed to the dating experience. Even the strongest individuals were unable to hear loneliness, so it was agreed to set up. I wasn't sure I was going to be with her. Arriving slowly and carefully in an ivory sweater that hugged her sleeve with warmth, her name being Arable Knox and her dark shoulders tingling. But what struck me most about her was the degree of questioning, each time she walked, as if she was trying to stay on the same page. With a grace that indicated pain but also strength, she shifted her weight on her crutches. Arable looked up at the table he had reserved, her voice barely rising above the warm of the cafe. She leaned in, gripping the handle of one of her hands as if to show bravery, and said, "Please, don't laugh at me because I'm not tall." The vulnerability in her tone was so raw that it felt like his fist had hit his chest. Kalen's blunder was not due to the crutches, but rather the fear that came with her words, which he found frightening. The fear of being seen as less, judged as a child, and being abandoned is still present in his life. Arable slipped into the chair opposite him, but her movements were cautious and painful. She bit her lip as if she was preparing to be rejected. Her crutches remained silent as witnesses to every insecurity she carried for a few minutes. Neither of them spoke. The bakery's golden light, soft, warm, comforting, drenched them both with the aroma of cinnamon and freshly baked bread, but neither could detect it. They were both lost in their own thoughts. Kalen finally regained composure and settled down. He reached for his coffee and felt a tingling sensation in his hand. Losing Lena had left him more fearful than he had anticipated, especially since caring for someone always leaves him vulnerable to loss. Nevertheless, Arable managed to tuck one strand of hair behind her ear, and in that brief moment, something unexpected occurred. Someone else was desperately trying to seem whole when they felt anything, but he recognized it because he felt it. She looked down at her sweater, embarrassed. "I know this looks ridiculous," she whispered, gesturing to the crutches. "It's customary to go on a blind date with someone who is in better physical shape. I almost didn't go in and almost turned back." Kalen accidentally swallowed. "I'm relieved you didn't." There's a tingling feeling in her eyes. Relief, bewilderment, hope, maybe. As the minutes went by, they all had a soft spot for each other, sharing memories of warm foods, winter storms, movies that made them laugh or cry, and bits of themselves they were willing to share. Arable shared that she had once been a competitive runner, but was paralyzed by an accident 2 years ago. She recounted how the world changed when she moved through it slower, how people sometimes looked at her, and sometimes they pretend not to see her at all. With a trembling smile, she tried to decipher the message, but her eyes made it clearer. Kalen recounted about Mira's love for painting snow globes and leaving sticky notes on their walls, without mentioning Lena or the nights she held onto his daughter as the final object in their lives. However, he also shared that she was fond of her daughter. Talking about his daughter was a safer choice. It was the part of his heart that still felt strong. Arable smiled at the sight of her handprint story. The laugh was so tender and tender, it lifted the spirits of the entire group. For a brief moment, Kalen felt an unclench. A mirror appeared midway through the date, revealing her small pink coat coated with snowflakes as she scurried past the bakery's entrance. Kalen had forgotten about her early release deadline for school that day. She screamed and giggled at Arable, but when she did, she froze for a moment and then twitched her eyes to him. Angry, Mira's voice was so high that she screeched and yelled with incredulity, "Ain't you in my womb?" When she finally stepped on the crutches, Arbel looked up and touched them. My mommy had to use these too when she heard her ankle injury last winter. Kaylin's heart shattered, but not because of the words mommy. He still suffered some injuries. With a smile on her face, Arbel knelt down and told the girl that she was fine. I'm just getting better at it. Mira nodded and then beamed back to herself, asking the same question that made both of them cry. Do you want to sit with us? Arbel asked, uncertain if she was intruding. Kaylin's face softened in response. He asked her to remain as O. They had shared pastries, and Mira kept up the conversation, oblivious to the nervous rhythm she observed. She exhibited Arbel's drawings, which showcased swirling colors and stick figures with happy expressions. As for the rest of us, she listened with a more intimate level of interest. Daddy doesn't smile like this for anyone, she affirmed, causing Kaylin to blush with a reddish hue. Arbel lowered her head, her cheeks warming. As the day progressed, the bakery's gleaming light dwindled, hinting at the fragility of the moment. Arbel's leg began to hurt. Kaylin couldn't hide the pain in her shoulders, but she never complained. When it was time to leave, she stood slowly, clinging on to her crutches. Kaylin reached out, his hand extending below hers for support. She briefly paused before letting her fingers rest in his palm. It wasn't romantic, it was human, careful, and gentle. The snow had intensified, swaying like tiny fragments that held onto their clothing. Kaylin guided them to the parking spot, while Mira moved ahead of them. At this point, Arbel looked up at him with eyes that reflected both storms and sunshine. She muttered, feeling sorry for her actions. I didn't want to be a burden. Blind dates are already uncomfortable, but with these, she lifted one crutch every week. People either stare at me excessively or not at all, and sometimes they laugh or pity me. Kaylin stepped closer, not invading her space, just enough so she could feel the genuine emotion. He whispered, Arbel, I didn't see your crutches up first. She blinked, unsure, hopeful. I saw you. Then Mira, with perfect timing, tugged on Arbel's coat and said, I hope you're back. Daddy didn't look so bad today as his eyes gleamed. She bent over painfully and kissed the top of Mira's hair. At that moment, Kaylin recognized that a woman was not just relearning how to walk, but also learning to trust, and he wondered if they were both learning from the same lessons. Their farewells were soft, lingering, filled with unspoken promises. Upon entering her rideshare, Arbel glanced at her once, but her response was more powerful than words. It conveyed a profound sense of gratitude, such as, thank you for seeing me. Please keep in touch, Kaylin expressed, and the beginning of healing was upon him. If you have a deep appreciation for this story, please feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bright Arts Music.